Hello everyone, welcome to the MudRoom, our free Uncommon Sense parenting class. How are you doing? Has June broken you yet? I know in the States, May tends to be the crazy end of school year month. Here in Canada, it's June. So congratulations to those of you who've already survived Maycember. Those of you who are still in the trenches with me, I feel you. What I found really interesting when I had my kids and they were little was that even though they weren't in daycare or school, June was still absolutely insane. Like, we're all shaking off all the fat cabin fever from the winter finally, and it's like we go way too far in the other direction. So just in case you're feeling completely frazzled and overwhelmed, no, it's not just you, even if your kids aren't in any kind of institutional setting. It's just a rough couple of months as, cabin fever wears off, summer mania sets in, and everybody kind of hits a wall and is ready for a damn break. Before we get into it today, allow me to introduce myself. If we haven't met yet, hi, I'm Allana Robinson, and I'm a parenting coach for parents of toddlers, preschoolers, and kindergartners. I help you understand why your kids are misbehaving and how to fix it without yelling, shaming, or timeouts. I'm your host here on the MudRoom. I'm the host of the Parenting Posse Facebook group, and I'm the creator of the Parentability program, where I help you raise well-behaved kids who listen. While you're here, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. If you find this session helpful, others will too, and those likes, comments, and subscribes really help to boost the signal for your fellow parents who may also find it helpful. So just last summer, we were talking about how to set up a predictable routine for our kids, particularly during these more carefree summer days. It's a very crucial part of parenting, especially when your days aren't looking exactly the same as commitments start to loosen up a bit. That's when you might find that your little ones are pushing boundaries and discipline is getting trickier without resorting to yelling or harsh punishments. So that's exactly what we're tackling today. We're going to dive into how you can maintain and enforce boundaries and do it all without raising your voice this summer. It's about replacing the tension and guilt with calm and understanding, ultimately strengthening your connection with your child. If you combine this session with our previous chat on routine, you're going to start to witness a significant positive change, not just in your child's behavior this summer, but in your overall parent-child relationship throughout the year. So here are 10 practical tips I'm bringing to you this summer to help you set and maintain boundaries without yelling. So first we want to start with demonstrating understanding. Now, I know this can be difficult because sometimes kids will often do things that completely defy comprehension. But children, especially younger ones, are often ruled by their emotions. So before setting a boundary or enforcing a rule, we need to take a moment to understand their feelings. You don't have to understand why they did what they did at this point, just how their emotions are presenting. By saying something like, "I see that you're upset because you wanted to play more," you're showing empathy and validating their feelings. If you want to take it a step further, tell them how you're interpreting their feelings, like your hands are clenched, your face is getting all red, you're crying. That tells me that you're upset that it's time to stop playing. This does two things. First, it trains our kids to notice their own physical indicators of their emotions. You aren't going to see the payout from this immediately, but as kids get older, if you keep pointing out the same physical indicators of their emotions, they're going to start recognizing them before they get to the boiling point. So you'll notice that they'll start clenching their fists and think, "Oh, this means I'm getting upset," which then gives them the space to do something about it before it becomes overwhelming. I'm going to use my own 9-year-old as an example. He knows that when he starts rolling his neck like this, that means that he's getting overwhelmed by emotion. He knows that because since he was itty bitty, I've noticed that he does that when he's getting upset, and I've pointed it out to him that that's when he needs to take a break. So recently when he was over at a neighbor's house and he started rolling his neck, he was like, "Oh, that's an indicator that I need to end the play date and come home." In little kids, we build that capacity by observing the signs that they're getting worked up and pointing them out and then enforcing those breaks So they get that embodied understanding of what to actually do when they feel that way to make themselves feel better. Second, we want clear and consistent boundaries. Kids feel more secure when they understand what's expected of them. It reduces their need to use all their energy using their working memory. Set boundaries that are consistent and clear and proactive. If you wait to set a boundary once your child has already crossed it, you are setting them up for failure. Think about what you want them to do in any given situation, and then prior to entering that situation, reiterate the boundaries. Every time I entered Walmart from 2013 to 2019, before even getting out of my car, I would tell them what we were there to buy, what they could choose, and what we weren't doing, explained in a language that a child understands. So for example, instead of saying, okay, we're not buying toys today, right? Be specific. We're here to buy food and shampoo. You can each pick one fruit to buy and one bottle of shampoo. We aren't buying toys today. If you see something that you'd like, we can take a picture of it so you can ask for it for your birthday. Instead of, behave yourself at grandma's. Remember, at grandma's house, we use quiet voices and gentle touches. If you need to play rough, you can ask to play in the backyard. This falls under the heading of telling your child what to do instead of what not to do. Again, as you do this more frequently, your children will pick up the pattern. Little brains are generally very good at pattern recognition. And as they get older, they'll start using those patterns themselves. This is the benefit of being really consistent. My 6-year-old now asks before we go into a store, what are we getting here? What can I get? And he actually recently asked this on a trip to the grocery store, and an older woman jumped in unprompted and said, you don't get something every time you go to the store. Mom's not made of money. So I had to step in and tell her that, I appreciate the solidarity, but he's not asking for a treat. He's asking what he gets to pick out on the grocery run. And then I turned to him and let him know that he could pick the cookies for their school lunches and 2 fruits. I was going to buy those things anyways. And quite frankly, it's a nice relief of the mental load to have to not make those choices. Kids want to be actively involved and make active decisions. So when we give them boundaries, we create that space for them. Tip 3 is to use non-verbal communication. Sometimes actions speak louder than words. And in fact, once you've set a clear, consistent, predictable boundary, if you use body language to reinforce those boundaries, you can often avoid getting into the dreaded negotiation phase. Harkening back to our episode last summer about setting up a routine for your child, a visual schedule is a nonverbal communication method. When your child is whining about wanting to go to the park and the park isn't happening till after lunch, rather than huffing out, I told you we're going to the park this afternoon, you can just walk them to the schedule and point at it so they can see when they're going to the park. And by not engaging verbally, you're not getting sucked into a negotiation. If your child is doing something that they shouldn't, a gentle touch on the shoulder or a steady, firm look can convey the right message without a raised voice. This is just another reason for those of you with toddlers to start teaching basic sign language. I can tell my kids to stop, to look, to do you understand, to wait, and a bunch of other simple directions using my hands, which again means that I can keep doing what I'm doing and take the emotion that my voice would infuse into the situation out of the equation. And if your child does cross a boundary, nonverbal communication is necessary because they're likely in their limbic system and they can't actually process your words anyways. The easiest way to enforce a boundary is to remove your child from the situation when they cross one. Nothing says, I won't let you do that, like picking them up and walking them out. Often, taking talking off the table makes boundaries much easier to enforce. Tip 4 is to use positive language. We kind of covered this in tip 2, but it's important and bears repeating. Tell your child what you want them to do instead of what you want them to stop doing. For instance, instead of saying, stop leaving your toys all over the floor, You can say, let's put your toys in this box when you're done playing. When we tell kids what not to do, all we do is open up this whole wide world of possibilities for them. We've eliminated one option, but there's generally at least 10 others that they now need to explore. Telling kids what not to do forces them into a process of elimination to try and figure out what to do, because most actions don't have an exact opposite. Using the toy box example, okay, the floor is off the table. What about piled on my bed? Scattered all over the table? Heaped on the couch? Is it just the floor in this room, or can I leave them all over the floor in another room? And hearkening back to tip 2, is this actually a firm boundary? If I leave them all over the floor, what happens? See how this forces kids to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks? See how that looks like boundary pushing rather than a small kid without a fully developed brain trying to figure out what the fuck these adults are expecting of me? So again, tell them specifically what to do, how long they have to do it, where to do it, what to do if something goes wrong. The more specific you are, the easier it is for your kids to meet your expectations. Tip 5, offer choices. This approach can help prevent power struggles. For example, if your child doesn't want to put on their shoes, you can say, would you like to wear your red shoes or your blue shoes today? By offering choices, you're promoting their independence and still maintaining the need for a boundary. You can offer a choice within just about any situation. With the example I gave earlier of my son at the grocery store, I gave him choices there. I let him pick which 1 bag of cookies and which 2 fruits would be in his and his brother's lunches for the next week. Because he got to make a choice and feel powerful in that situation, there was no power struggle over which veggies I chose or which main I was preparing for them. Parents often complain about their kids making bad choices, but the truth is, most haven't taught their kids to make choices at all. So again, they're forced into the trial and error of fuck around and find out. The more choices we give little ones, the better choices they're going to make as big ones. And again, tying in predictability, if there's a limited selection, say that before your child tries to make their choice. If I'd taken my son into the cookie aisle and said, pick a bag of cookies, and he went and picked something that I wasn't okay with him eating, that is on me. That's not him making a bad choice. I wasn't specific enough, and I moved the goalposts after he made a choice. Negating your child's choice after they make it will make them resistant to making choices because, again, you're setting them up for failure. So it's important to consider all the possible outcomes of a choice and only present choices that are both available and acceptable. If you give them a choice of going to the beach or the park, and then once they pick the beach, you're like, oh, but I don't want to go swimming. Can't we go to the park? That's not a choice. A little bit of mental gymnastics before presenting choices can save you a ton of time and emotional energy later. Next tip is to model behavior. Children are often mimics, learning how to handle emotions and conflicts by watching adults. By demonstrating calm, respectful reactions, even when you're upset, you're teaching your child a valuable lesson in emotional regulation. Now, I'm not under any illusions that this is always achievable. We're human beings too. But even in your dysregulation, it's possible to model appropriate reactions. So for instance, I'm a hitter. When something pisses me off, my first instinct is to strike it. That would, however, generally result in jail time. But that doesn't mean I just have to hold all that emotion in. There are things I can hit. Punching bags, gym mats, the bed, the couch, even the passenger seat of my car if needed. And I will point that out to my kids. I'm mad, or I'm frustrated, or I'm overstimulated. I'm going to go hit my punching bag so that I don't hit you. I'll be back. And then I go do it. And as a result, my kids, who are also hitters, have had very few incidents at daycare, preschool, kindergarten, and now elementary school. In fact, because they're able to redirect themselves, it's helped some of their classmates learn to redirect themselves too. So everybody wins. I'm not bottling up my emotions. They aren't bottling up theirs. Nobody's getting hurt. And it's building emotional capacity for their peers too. When you're calm, engaging with curiosity rather than condemnation can really help kids process their big emotions. Next tip is to practice active listening. If your child feels that you genuinely listen to their concerns or requests, they're more likely to respect your rules. This means kneeling down to their level, making eye contact, and giving responsive feedback. Sportscasting, which is exactly what it sounds like, you're reviewing what happened or what is happening like you're a sportscaster reporting on a match, or echoing, where you listen to what your child said and paraphrase it back to them, are both really powerful active listening tools. Going back to our park example, if your child is screaming, "I want to go to the park right now!" rather than trying to reason with them, echoing their sentiment back to them, "You really wish we could go to the park right now," will make them feel heard and understood. And often, this has the fallout effect of getting your child to expand on their original thought. So they might say, "Yeah, I really want to go down the slide," which gives you clues as to what is causing their issue. A child saying they want to go down the slide so badly that they're screaming about it needs vestibular input. So how can you get them that without budging on your boundary? Do you have a swing set outside that you could push them on for a few minutes? Could you do a dance party? Could you spin till you're so dizzy that you all fall down? This is, again, teaching your child to recognize their needs and fulfill them within the bounds of the boundaries you've set. And by using sportscasting, it has much the same effect as I spoke about earlier, where you're pointing out your child's physical indicators of dysregulation. You're able to highlight for them the actions that are informing your impression of their emotional state, and thus helping them both understand your perspective and recognize those risk factors later. Use I statements. Using I statements instead of you statements can prevent your child from feeling attacked, which can often lead to defensiveness. Saying something like, "I feel worried when you climb so high, can we find a safer way to play?" shows them that you're concerned for their safety, not just issuing commands. This is pretty self-explanatory, but for little ones, they don't have the ability to take your perspective yet. That doesn't really develop till around 6-7 years old. By using I statements, you help them see your concerns and make active, critical decisions based on that feedback. Natural consequences. You know how much I love my natural consequences. Let your child learn from the natural outcome of their actions, provided that it's safe. For instance, if they refuse to wear a jacket, they might feel cold outside. This method can be a powerful teacher and encourages them to make better choices next time. I have an entire guide on my blog on how to use natural consequences and when they're inappropriate, because it's not always safe or even effective to use a natural consequence, in which case we move on to a logical consequence. But if you can use natural consequences, which I like to call the fuck around and find out consequences, where you just let what is going to happen, happen, they are the most impactful and will stick with your child in the long run. Again, I'm not going to go into too much depth about these here, as I've spoken on them a lot on this podcast, and I have multiple blogs about it. I even have an ebook on using natural and logical consequences, but I wanted to highlight them because they're very effective at showing your child why that boundary is there. And anything a child experiences firsthand, rather than being told about it, is going to make far more impact. Regular family meetings. This could be a weekly session where you discuss family rules, why they're essential, and what happens if they're not followed. This encourages open communication and allows your child to have input, which could lead to better cooperation. It could also be just more ad hoc. When I notice that a boundary is being pushed on really hard, that's when I step in with a social story, or we talk about it in the car where they're a captive audience, but they don't have to look at me. Whatever format works for you, talking about expectations and rules and the expected consequences if they aren't followed at a neutral time when there isn't any need to act on the conversation immediately, much improves your chances of your children adhering to those boundaries. I like to lead with curiosity. Do you know why mom said you can't do this or why you have to wait for that? 9 times out of 10, they have no idea. And if they do, there's usually a problem I didn't see that's creating their urgency or pushing. Once I know what that problem is, I can collaborate with them to solve the problem. With little ones, this can be a little bit more challenging, but by having these conversations at neutral times when everyone isn't caught up in the emotions, you're much more likely to get a gold nugget that you can use to help them see the light. Setting and maintaining boundaries without raising your voice can seem like quite the challenge, especially during the freedom-filled summer months. But with these 10 tips in your parenting toolkit, that's more than achievable. Whether it's using clear I statements, active listening, or allowing natural consequences to do the teaching, there are multiple strategies to ensure that boundaries that you set are respected and understood. Remember, our aim here isn't to control our kids, but to guide them towards becoming well-rounded individuals capable of making good decisions. So here's to a summer of understanding, empathy, and a lot of fun without the need to yell. Want to feel more prepared to manage those crazy-making behaviors? Don't forget to download my free scripts. It's like having a secret weapon to diffuse tense moments and foster a calmer, more understanding family environment. You can find them on my website or at prnt.link/scripts, so be sure to check them out and let the summer fun begin stress-free. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you next month for another Uncommon Sense Parenting class. Bye!